this is me again, and I'm talking a little bit about how to tie a quilt. Tying a quilt is probably the first way I ever learned how to fasten those 3 layers together that make the quilt. And my mother always taught us how to tie a quilt, and she always used a knotless tie. And this is a very well-loved, beloved quilt that we made as a group. And this it's survived all these years. And this was done with the knotless tie. And you can see that they kind of get little loves on them right here. This is how yarn usually operates in a tie. I'll show you how to do this tie. I've done it myself with heavier thread, kind of like a crochet string, a heavyweight crochet string. But I usually have better luck with yarn for the knotless tie, and it just works great. The first thing to know about even when you're tying a quilt, it's really important that you have your layers, of course, and you kind of have your back and your batting bigger than your actual quilt, because it kind of shortens up as the quilting gets done, whether it's this style or machine quilting. And so you want your back and your batting to be a little bit bigger than your actual project. So what I did, I took this one and I actually marked my 5 spots on my quilt. Your quilting, be it tying a quilt or with machine quilting, it needs to be close enough that's recommended on the batting, because sometimes the batting will say it has to be quilted 6 to 8 inches. So you have to, at least as a minimum, have to have quilting that often. Sometimes it's bigger, and sometimes it just kind of depends what the batting requires. So make sure you look at that when you're looking at your batting. How often does it have to be quilted? So, because that will make a difference on how you do it. So with this one, I'm just kind of assuming that this is going to be enough. So whatever design I have here, I try to see if there's an obvious pattern that I can follow without having to mark the whole quilt. And I also try to avoid seams. So if I'm trying to put a yarn tie through a seam, you can see I didn't avoid it very well on this one because I did it here. So that's hard to do. So sometimes you have to kind of offset yourself from the seam a little bit, but try to avoid seams, or like in this case, I went on the side of the quilt that has the less density of fabric. So obviously I ironed the seam that way, so there's not a lot of seam right here, so I kind of put my stitch on that side. So find the spot of least resistance on that. But here's how to do the knotless tie. And there are thousands of ways to tie a quilt, and a lot of them use a square knot. And a lot of them you can do several, and you kind of whip the thread around, and it kind of, every time you do something at a charity or you're tying quilts as a group, there's a different way to do it. So I'll leave the YouTube tutorials up to you to kind of look that up, but this is the knotless tie that you don't see too often, okay? So I just get a needle that has a good point and a big eye, and I just kind of put my yarn through it. This is just like a Red Heart 4-ply weight, and I just make do the ends even, and there's no knot, okay? So this is my next spot that I'm going to go in, and the method is down, up, then you give it a haircut, so to speak. And this is great to show kids because they don't have to deal with knots. So if I had this in my quilting frame, and I have like a PVC pipe quilting frame or a big hoop, but I've also had a whole quilt just like this, and I've had it all pinned. I've just done it on the table too. So any of these ways work. So you just go down, and I wouldn't, of course, be holding it like this. It'd be in my frame. And you leave a little edge, and then you come up about a 1/4 inch away from where you went down. Okay, it should look just like that. All right, nice and flat on that side. So I went down and came up, and so now I just came up this way. So I go down pretty close, the same place I went down the first time. Same place. And look at me and my bunchiness. And then I make sure I have it nice and flat. And then I come up again, approximately the same place I came up the first time. I can see I just did that again. Okay, so I went down and up, and now I give it a haircut. And there's your knotless tie. And the yarn expands to fill the hole that the needle made. And I have had many of these quilts. You can see I've never lost any ties from these. They look terrible, but they look well loved. So once again, down. And these are great for utilitarian quilts, or quilts that are going to get a lot of wear and tear that you're going to be replacing often and don't want to put a lot of time into the hand quilting of them. So down and up, just make sure that's nice and good. And you go down in the same spot. And I had never seen this done until I was describing it to a quilt friend, and she goes, "Oh, that's how my grandma did it." So it must be a grandma thing that grandmas did once, you know. But that's how she learned also. Just make sure they're all pulled pretty well. Yeah, that's good. And then once you got your everything done, you just kind of give it a nice little haircut and you're done. That's an easy way to tie a quilt. I've tied many baby quilts this way over the years. And it's the knotless tie. So it's pretty easy to do. So good luck on that.